a suburb of Medina, the Muslim army was received by the joyous Madinis, who had come to congratulate the Prophet on the manifest victory that Allah had granted him, acting as the mouthpiece of the other true believers. After entertaining Allah's praise, he excused himself for not having joined them on grounds that the Prophet's intention was presumably an errand aiming to intercept a caravan of camels only. He added that if it had occurred to him that it would be real war, he would have never tarried. The Prophet assured Usayd that he had believed him. The Prophet now entered Medina as a man to be counted for in a new dimension, the military field. In consequence, a large number of the Prophet of Medina embraced Islam, which added a lot to the strength, power and moral standing of the true religion. The Prophet exhorted the Muslims to treat the prisoners so well, to such an extent that the captors used to give the captives their bread, the more valued part of the meal, and keep the dates for themselves. Prisoners of war constituted a problem awaiting resolution, because it was a new phenomenon in the history of Islam. The Prophet consulted Abu Bakr and Umar as to what he should do with the prisoners. Abu Bakr suggested that he should ransom them, explaining this by saying, "They are, after all, our relatives, and this money would give us strength against the disbelievers. Moreover, Allah could guide them to Islam." Umar advised killing them, saying, "They are the leaders of kufr, disbelief." The Prophet preferred Abu Bakr's suggestion to that of Umar's. The following day, Umar showed on the Prophet and Abu Bakr to see them weeping. He showed extreme astonishment and inquired about the situation so that he might weep if it was worth weeping for, or else he would feign weeping. The Prophet said that a Quranic verse had been revealed rebuking them for taking ransom from the captives rather than slaying them. It is not for a prophet that he should have prisoners of war and free them with ransom, until he had made a great slaughter among his enemies in the land. You desire the good of this world, the money of ransom for freeing the captives, but Allah desires for you the hereafter, and Allah is Almighty, All-Wise. Were it not a previous ordainment from Allah, a severe torment would have touched you for what you took. The previous divine ordainment went as follows: thereafter is the time either for generosity, free them with ransom, or ransom, which included an area providing permission to take ransom. That is why no penalty was imposed. They were rebuked only for taking prisoners before subduing all the land of disbelief. Apart from this, the polytheists taken to Medina were not only prisoners of war, but rather arch criminals of war. One modern war penal law brings to justice to receive their due sentence of death or prison for life. The ransom for the prisoners ranged between 4,000 and 1,000 dirhams in accordance with the captive's financial situation. Another form of ransom assumed an educational dimension. Most of the Meccans, unlike the Madinis, were literate, and so each prisoner who could not afford the ransom was entrusted with 10 children to teach them the art of writing and reading. Once the child had been proficient enough, the instructor would be set free. Another clan of prisoners were released and ransomed on grounds of being hard up. Zainab, the daughter of the Prophet, paid the ransom of her husband Abu necklace. The Muslims released her prisoner and returned the necklace in deference to the Prophet, but on condition that Abu to migrate to Medina, which he actually did. In captivity there was also an eloquent orator called Suhail, suggested that they pull out his front teeth to disable him from speaking, but the Prophet turned down his suggestion for fear Quraysh would retaliate in the same manner on one hand and on the other for fear of Allah's wrath on the day of resurrection. A lesser pilgrim detained in Mecca was released in return for setting Abu Sufyan's son, a captive, free. The Battle of Badr in its Quranic context, a chapter of Al-Anfal, spoils of war was revealed on the occasion of the Battle of Badr. 7th to AH, it constituted a unique divine commentary on this battle. Allah the All-High, in the context of this chapter, draws on major issues relating to the whole process of Islamization. Allah here draws the attention of the Muslims to the still lingering moral shortcomings in their character. He wants them to build an integrated, purified society. He speaks about the invisible assistants. He sent down to his obedient servants to enable them to accomplish their noble objectives. He wants the Muslims to rid themselves of any trait of haughtiness or arrogance that might sneak in. He wants them to turn to him for help, obey him and his messenger. After that he delineated the noble objectives for which the messenger launched that bloody battle and directed them to the merits and qualities that brought about the great victory. The polytheist hypocrites, the Jews, and prisoners of war were also mentioned, being admonished to surrender to the truth and adhere to it only. The question of the spoils of war was resolved, and the principles and basics relevant to this issue were clearly defined. The laws and rules pertinent to war and peace were legalized and codified. Especially at this advanced stage of the Islamic action, Allah wanted the Muslims to follow war ethics dissimilar to those of pre-Islamic practices. The Muslims are deemed to outdo the others in ethics, values, and fine ideals. He wants to impress on the world that Islam is not merely a theoretical code of life, it is rather mind cultivation orientated practical principles. In this context, he established inter- and intra-state relations. The fast of Ramadan